Now that we looked at root position seventh chords, let's look at what happens when we invert seventh chords. Root position seventh chords all look like that, or can be simplified to look like that, sort of mutant snowman's shape. When we invert them, we do just what we do with triads. We take the bottom note and we move it up an octave. Because seventh chords have a seventh in them, when it gets inverted, it becomes a second. And seconds in music have to be written staggered, diagonally from each other. You can't try to overlap the notes. That doesn't work. Don't try to write something that looks like that. That's incorrect notation. Now, in terms of what do you do when you have notes that are a second apart? Well, if they're part of the same voice part of the same chord, then they're going to be the higher one to the right and the lower one to the left. If they're part of different voices, different parts singing it on the same sheet, the same staff, then you'll just line up the stems. In this case, because they're all part of the same voice, we're looking at the higher one to the right. And in terms of where we place it, we align it as if these notes had a stem, like that, so that the higher is to the right, the lower is to the left, and they're lined up to fit on a stem. Even if you're writing whole notes where there's no stem there, you're still going to use that system of how to align them. Now, when I invert it again, I take the bottom note here and I move it up an octave as well. So it looks like that. Again, the notes that are a second apart are lined up as if I have a stem there. And when I move the bottom note up, same idea. So with triads, we have root position, first inversion, and second inversion. But with sevenths, because we have four notes, I have a root position, a first inversion, a second inversion, and a third inversion. In terms of the root, all I need to write for my symbol is a 7. So we'll just pretend this is a 5 chord. So I'm going to write a 7 there. Now, that's my 7 because I have the regular triad and I've added a 7th. Remember that we take a lot of notes for granted when we write the inversion symbols. We don't have to write any numbers at all for a root position triad. We just assume that's our norm. Any other numbers are telling us when it's different from a root position triad. In this case, the only thing that's different from a root position triad is adding the 7th. So all I have to do is write the 7th, and I'll know that's a root position 7th chord. For this one, I can't write a 7 because it's not in root position. And if I look, I'm measuring the intervals from the lowest note with any inversion, always from the lowest note. I don't have a 7. I have a 6 and a 5 and a 3. Well, my note that's different is a 6. But I can't just write 6 there because 6 would be the first inversion of a triad, not the first inversion of a 7th chord. Because this is a 7th chord, I have to specify that 7 in there, that note that's different. So I'll write a 6, 5. I don't need to write anything more than 6 and 5 to show my reader that that is a first inversion 7th chord. This note didn't change, it's just where it's supposed to be. I don't have to worry about that. So first inversion is a 6, 5. Now here, I've got a 6 and a 4 and a 3. Well, I can't write 6 because I already have a chord that took that. And I can't write 6, 4 either because the second inversion triad has 6, 4 as its symbol. So for this, I have to figure out what can I write. I'm going to write the 4 and the 3. In both of these instances, I'm showing the 6 and the 5, the 4 and the 3. These are notes that are a second away from each other. I'm clearly showing the reader that this chord is not a triad. It has a note that is in addition to the triad. It has a seventh in there. And for my third inversion, I've got a 6 and a 4 and a 2. Well, I can't write 6-4 for the same reason I couldn't write 6-4 on the last one. And so the standard terminology, the standard symbol for this one is 4-2. Now, could I just theoretically maybe write 2? Yeah, I could. If I just wrote 2, that would show me that difference in pitches. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that would probably specify it. And some books will actually do just the 2, but very few. Most will show the 4 and the 2. Also, the 4 shows me the third of the chord, which is a fairly important note. It's one that we want to make sure is in there. And it's a note that will often change in chords, especially in minor. So this has become the standard procedure for that. So root position is 5-7. First inversion is 5-6-5. Second inversion is 5-4-3. Third inversion is 5-4-2. And the 5 is really just a placeholder there. Any type of seventh chord, whether it's a 2-7 or a 7-7, any type of seventh chord follows the exact same pattern in terms of inversions. As with all chordal inversions, we're looking at what is the lowest pitch, right? So the root is the lowest pitch, the third of the chord is the lowest pitch, the fifth of the chord is the lowest pitch, and the seventh of the chord is the lowest pitch. And of course, the lowest pitch is what determines the inversion.